So, hello. We have a great treat today. I'm going to visit with Craig Beggins, who's the managing broker of Beggins Group Real Estate. Stick around. Hey, welcome back. So, as promised, I have with me Craig Beggins. So, Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Joe.
So,
Glad to be here.
the, so let just share a little bit about the Beggins Group and the history of Beggins.
Let's see. We've got a pretty deep background. My father, Jim, when I was born, was a flight mechanic out of the Army, and I'm sorry, Air Force. And he was just trying to find a better way to make a life for himself, and got into real estate on the side. And then he grew in his real estate business and became a manager of a company in Miami called Tarno Realty. And Tarno Realty became the largest real estate company in Miami. And this is in the 70s. And around that time, 1973, Century 21 had begun the first national franchise operation. And they left California, came to Florida, and went to the biggest city in Florida, Miami, went to the biggest broker in Miami, Tarno Realty. And Tarno Realty bought the master franchise rights for Century 21 in 1973. And that's at a time when there was no Coldwell Banker, when there was no Remax. Century 21 was the first franchise. We're going to actually celebrate our 50th anniversary next year. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
So Dad continued for the next 10 years to build Century 21 from zero to 350 offices over that 10-year period. So he sold 350 franchises and had about 4,500 salespeople in Century 21.
Wow. Now, was that all over Florida?
That was, his rights were from Orlando to Key West.
Okay.
That was his territory. And that's how Century 21 grew in the beginning. They sold regional territories. And then they went all over the country. And now we're in 80 different countries with 120,000 salespeople. So it's really big, a big organization. So anyway, Dad sold the company in 1983. So 10 years after he started it. And he started a business with his friend in Tampa, Randy Green. And the company's called Beggins Green. And Beggins Green started doing some developing because Dad sold the company, made some money. Then he became a real estate developer. And in 1985, he found this waterfront community in Apollo Beach called Symphony Isles. So he bought Symphony Isles, and then he started Symphony Realty, Symphony Builders, and Symphony Realty Development. So we developed the roads, we built the houses, and we sold the houses. And at that time, I was in college, and it seemed right to get my real estate license. So I got my real estate license. I was going to the University of Florida, and I would drive back and forth and sit in the model home on the weekends. And that first summer, I'll never forget, I made $7,000, which in 1986 is not bad for an 18-year-old kid in college for 2 months. So that just put it into me. So it was just a small company. It was Mom, Dad, and me. And so Dad made me, I moved to Tampa, finished a transfer to USF, got my degree, and Dad made me general manager of Mom and him and me. And Dad was actually doing other stuff. So I became the general manager of Symphony Realty. We started selling. And Dad came to me and said, get your broker's license and you can have half of the real estate company. Because I'd already graduated college. So I got half of Symphony Realty. So Symphony Realty, me and Dad, partners. And the first thing we did is we took Symphony Realty from the garage of the model home we built to a storefront on Apollo Beach Boulevard. And I was approached by a builder. I sold a lot of lots. And there was a builder in town named Rick Remke. And Rick Remke's dad was Bob Remke. And Bob Remke had bought a Century 21 franchise from my dad 20 years earlier. Right?
Yeah.
So Rick Remke, I sold a lot of houses with Rick Remke, and he came to me one day and said, Craig, you know what? I like building houses. You look at the real estate side. Why don't you buy my real estate office? So I bought my first Century 21 office in 1992, and I paid $15,000, and I got a fancy phone system with it. So that's how it worked. We got the phone system worth about $15,000, and that's what we paid for the real estate company. And then so I got a franchise renewal from my dad's partner that bought him out. And there we are, 1992. I'm 23 years old. I've got a Century 21 office that my dad had started 20 something years earlier, and I knew nothing. So the training began, and Century 21 was amazing with their training. But back then we didn't have the internet. So I'd have to drive across the state to Fort Lauderdale, get an hotel room, stay, and do all that type of stuff. But I built some really good bonds along that way. And in 1996, Craig Sweeting owned Century 21 Preferred Realty in Sun City. And Craig was just getting tired, and we would carpool back and forth from Fort Lauderdale to get our training. They'd pump us up, we'd come back, try to implement what they taught us, and then the agents wouldn't do what we said to do. And we'd go back and we'd get frustrated. And after a couple of years of that, Craig said, "Hey, why don't you buy my office?" And I said, "Okay." So we bought Century 21 Preferred Realty, and now we're a 2-office company. And then a couple of years later, a friend of mine in St. Pete had 2 offices in Madeira Beach and Indian Rocks Beach. Says, "Craig, I got this really big project. I'm gonna make more money doing the project than I ever on the brokerage. Why don't you buy my offices?" I said, "Okay." So we bought Madeira Beach and Indian Rocks Beach in 1998. And then we operated as a 4-office company for quite a few years. And then we met our partner, John Lum. John was a very, very classy, very established developer and had a real estate company to sell his stuff. It was List Realty because he was List Developers. And List Developers had done some deals with my brother over in St. Pete, financing stuff. And we came to John and said, "Hey, why don't you let us run your real estate company? You're much better as a developer, and we're better as a real estate company." So we formed a joint venture called List with Beggins. So that's Century 21, List Realty with Beggins Enterprises. So we just had fun and called it List with Beggins. So that would be our 5th office. And then we started expanding with partners, and we opened up in Sarasota and Longboat Key. And then we got our latest acquisition was in Brandon. So now we're an 8-office operation, about 400 salespeople. And we're number 1 in the Southeast US. We're number 16 in the US altogether out of about 2,600 offices.
Wow.
But overnight success, 28 years of starting with nothing and growing over time.
Good. 28 years overnight success. I love it. So Greg, my show and my channel focuses on South Tampa. So what can you share with us about the South Tampa market, South Tampa real estate market?
Well, I'm gonna go a little broader first and then come back to that. We're fortunate. Real estate is deemed essential, so we're allowed to operate. I was on a call yesterday with a bunch of Century 21 guys from all over the country, and many of our states are not essential. They're not allowed to show property. They're not allowed to make listing presentations. It's virtual or it's nothing. We are essential in Tampa, thank goodness. And I am utterly amazed at how much business we're doing. Now, I'm not bragging saying we're doing great, because we're not. I'm just amazed at how much more we're doing than I thought we would.
Right.
It turns out we're about 38% off of the same time last year. And it's a shame because this year was rocking it. January sales were great. February sales were great. The first 2 weeks in March were great. I mean, really great. And then brakes came on. So I just went at the sales meeting this morning. I went through and showed the number of listings taken, number of sales taken in all of April versus all of April last year. We're down about 28% on listings and 38% on sales. And the biggest challenge we're having with that, in my opinion, is that the lenders have tightened up. They were raising credit score requirements and they're taking away loan options. So where we were more flexible before, we're not as flexible now. So you're looking at about 38%. Now, that being said, the problem we had coming into, and this is South Tampa especially, the problem we had coming into the pandemic was low inventory. Now we're taking even less inventory, but we still have buyer demand. And what I found, it's very interesting, there is what I call pent up buyer demand. You know, the way our system works now with all the technology that we have, there's 14,000 agents in our Tampa Bay MLS. It's a lot of agents. And those agents have prospects that are at some stage in the buying cycle. And those prospects are on drip campaigns. So if a new listing hits the market, ping, they get alerted, right? So with pent up demand and low inventory, when a new listing hits the market, ping, it's getting attention like nobody's business. And we're getting, I can't believe it, but we're getting multiple offers and they're selling it higher than full price. Our job now is to make sure we're qualifying the buyer properly with their loan officer, their credit scores, knowing all that stuff, because financing is getting so tight. And jumbo loans are becoming a problem too.
Right.
So.
And so you talked how this pandemic has hit the market. So if somebody's interested, either a buyer or a seller, what can they expect in the market today? Is it going to take longer? Are they going to have to drop the price or what?
No, actually, I've been paying a lot of attention. Century 20 has had me plugged in with the National Association of Realtors head economist, and just they're hitting with information all over the place. They're actually forecasting sales volume for 2020 will be down about 13%. We're basically going to lose the spring selling season, right?
Right.
But they're saying prices will go up 1 to 3%.
Oh, wow.
There's always a balance. It's supply and demand. And we simply don't have supply. Even a lot of the home builders stopped acquiring land during the pandemic. So when that whole process of them acquiring the land, getting the zoning, getting the roads in, building the houses, we just pushed all that back further. So we're going to have a short supply of housing. And at some point, we're going to have built up pent demand buyers. And I'm kind of excited, like a little future forecasting. There's a lot of people I'm just talking to in my neighborhood that they want to improve their house now. They want to get they want a pool, or they want a bigger yard, or they want to be on the water, or they want to do this. And they don't have to drive around. They don't have to be so close to everybody anymore. And so I think there's going to be a whole bunch of new demand coming saying, man, which is going to partially solve our problem. Because you, as example, Joe, if you said, hey, you know what? I really would like a newer home with a big backyard, right? And so you would do that. You would put your house on market, which would help our inventory problem. Right. But then you're going to buy another one, which is going to take away our inventory problem, right? So they're saying about 80% of the time, the seller is going to buy again in the same area. So we're really not adding more inventory that way either.
Right.
So that's why prices aren't forecasted to go down, because demand is so low.
Right.
I mean, supply is so low and demand is high.
Right. So, Craig, if somebody is going to buy or sell, especially here in South Tampa where I'm located,
right,
and they enlist the help of Beggins, what can they expect from us as a brokerage?
I'm going to talk about something that's really complicated but needs to be discussed. In Florida, a real estate agent is automatically a transaction broker when you meet them. What a transaction broker is an agent who can't pick one party's interest above another. And so what that means is, if I'm your agent and you're my seller, and I find out the buyer is willing to pay more for your house, I can't tell you. And if I'm the buyer's agent, or if I'm the seller's agent and I find out the opposite. If I'm the buyer's agent and I find out the seller's willing to take less, I can't tell you that, because I can't put one party's interest to the detriment of another, because I'm really a referee in the transaction.
Right.
Century 21 Beggins, which is different than other Century 21s in the market, we feel we train our agents very well. And there's another form of representation that's available in Florida, and it's called single agency. And single agency gives you the right to actually take on a fiduciary responsibility like a lawyer would with their client, with a seller or a buyer. So we really work together to strategize to put one party's interest above another, which is a whole different experience when you're negotiating.
Right.
So, and when you're representing, and when you're pricing, right?
Right.
Like, as an example, I was helping a guy with a house the other day. It was an agent, one of my agents, and this house is absolutely spectacular. It's an acre on Tampa Bay, 6,000 square feet. All the comps that are anywhere close to it indicate it at like $300 a foot. But knowing the market and knowing the seller's motivation and knowing that this is an acre, not a 100-foot lot, this is 6,000 square feet that's spit polished and shine. And knowing this, we're going to go and tackle it at $400 a foot, which is still pretty low for your market, because this is down south.
Right.
Right. But just having the seller's back, because the other agency interview said, yeah, we could probably get you $1.8 million. I'm like, no, dude, we're going to get you 2.4. Let me show you how we're going to do this. And it is putting one party's interest to the detriment of the other. Right. So the acronym for single agency is FOLC, fiduciary rights, obligations, which means you take on the better interest of that person. Obedience, which is not part of transaction brokerage. Loyalty, and confidentiality. So as a single agent, you've got confidentiality. As a transaction broker, you have a limited form of confidentiality. So that's really a big driver of what I think makes us different. if you're truly using a real estate, you got to understand though, a real estate agent is not, their job is not to find a house, find a buyer, find a seller. That's easy. We don't actually sell houses. All we do is attract buyers, qualify them, and make sure their motivations are right and the deal comes together. Because I don't know how good, it doesn't matter how good I am. If you like this house, I ain't selling you that one.
Right.
Right? So we're going to use all the tools we have to make sure that happens.
Great.
It's a strategy.
Yeah. Craig, thank you so much for taking time today to talk to us.
Oh, my pleasure.
I look forward to many years with you, right?
Me too. Well, it sounds like we're both pretty stable guys. I'm 28 years in the brokerage business. You're 33 years as a principal.
Yeah.
So we're long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow. I hope you really enjoyed that. Craig Beggins just has so much experience and so much knowledge. And I really appreciate that he took time to visit with us today. So I hope you caught a couple of the things he said, right? So even though they expect the market to be down, they don't expect it to be down too much, only because home prices are still expected to increase. So if you're a home seller, that may be good news for you. If you're a home buyer, well, the good news is the mortgage rates are low, almost historic lows. However, the mortgage criteria has been limited, right? So listen, if you like this information, leave a comment below. Let us know how I can serve you more. Be sure to reach out to me at my website, joebrownc21.com. And there you can shoot me an email. You can leave comments there. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you can see all the great news about South Tampa living. So let me tell you, I love sharing this information with you because South Tampa, Florida living is awesome.